Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today's video we're going to be talking about this whole new champion rebalancing thing, and I obviously know that everybody has their own favorites and everybody has champions they want to be rebalanced most. And I saw Captain Brandon's video yesterday where he discussed just that, which champions he thinks should be rebalanced first. And even before he posted his video, I was kind of like already thinking about making a video about it as well, to kind of like present which champions I personally would like to see balanced most, I guess. And I started actually writing down like a lot of champions that I think should be rebalanced, and then I started listing them, and then I realized that there are far too many that I think should get a rebalance, and obviously some of them need it far more than others, and some of them are doing just okay. Now this game has unfortunately extremely large amount of pool of champions that have been good at one point but have completely fallen off the map to begin with. Additionally, we have a whole bunch of champions that realistically are good champions, and only problems with them are the numbers, like mainly the damage numbers or maybe some ability proc numbers. For instance, Cable, Punisher 2099, Beast, Psylocke. There are a whole bunch of champions that are fundamentally really good and potent champions. Unfortunately, they just don't have enough punch power, and unfortunately some of their ability proccing numbers also aren't quite sufficient for them to be viable. So I think there is a whole group of champions that don't necessarily need a full-scale rebalance. They just need maybe a couple of extra abilities added, maybe some numbers tweaked. But we're going to be talking about 10 champions I would like to see kind of get the rebalance as early as possible. So let's jump to the next screen, and with spot number 10 we're going to be starting off with this Cyclops. Obviously, even though Kabam Mike has stated that Cyclops is in fact an extremely effective champion in Alliance War, I believe, if people choose to use him, I personally feel that he needs a lot more love. Now, Cyclops has never been my favorite character in X-Men series, and I have never been a huge fan of Cyclops. However, that's just the mere fact that Cyclops is at large one of the bigger kind of like faces of X-Men, has been like large amount of time he has spent as being X-Men leader. So obviously we have two versions of Cyclops in game. Well, obviously I wish for both of them to get buffed because he is an iconic character in Marvel, and whether I like him particularly or not, I think that he has been completely done injustice. And the simple fact that he's still in the game in two versions, so bad, so useless, when he realistically hasn't had a role in this game since like 2015. And that was largely thanks to his part in the Synergy team. So yeah, Cyclops is definitely the champion number, one of the top 10 champions that I wish to get rebalanced as quickly as possible, ideally both of them. So let's go on to number 9, and I think Moon Knight, because I think Moon Knight is a tragic wasted opportunity. He's such a unique character where his abilities actually do depend on physical time of the day and physical moon phases, so on and so forth. And that's all cool. I think that is something unique, that is something that should be kept. But the problem with Moon Knight is that even on the best day, even when Moon Knight has the perfect conditions on his synergies, even when he has perfect conditions on the moon phase and the time of the day, even on best day, he doesn't really hold a candle to the top tier games, top tier champions in this game anymore. And therefore, I think that the whole idea behind Moon Knight is really cool. The problem is that it just does not cut it anymore. And yeah, I really hope that Moon Knight does get a rebalance soon, because he's one of those champions that always has kind of like intrigued me a lot, and he's effectively kind of like Marvel's version of Batman. And I think there's a lot of potential in this character, and I definitely like to see him get some more love. Now let's move on to spot number 8, and spot number 8 would be kind of like both Daredevils. It's Daredevil OG1 and Daredevil Netflix. Arguably Daredevil Netflix needs that buff more, because at least OG Daredevil has something in the game that he's pretty much the best at. But obviously again, underwhelming damage numbers plus requirement of a max sig ability to be reliably able to evade these projectiles and so forth. Obviously Daredevil is just simply a champion that once was considered to be at the very peak of metagame. He was a staple in majority of the kind of well-established rosters, and to a point where he has completely fallen off the map. And yeah, I think Daredevil should get much more love, both versions, Netflix and the original one, the classic one. I think he's a fantastic champion. He has always been interesting. I like him in comics, I like him in cartoons or wherever else I see him. Netflix show is amazing, obviously. And yeah, I think it would be absolutely amazing if we could actually use our Daredevils in this game, because they are, again, very iconic characters for Marvel in general. Let's move on to this next spot, and that would be War Machine. That's right, I believe War Machine deserves some justice now. First and foremost, obviously, partially because War Machine is actively on the big screens, because Rhodey needs some love, right? He has been in Avengers movies, he's in pretty much Civil War, he's in so many different movies, and such a shame that a champion that consistently gets put in front of our eyes doesn't get any love at all whatsoever in this game. Not to mention that up until now, basically, I think, has he been added as a 6-star? Basically, he has only been as a 4-star champion. He's gonna come out as a 5-star champion extremely shortly, but realistically, he has zero relevance in today's game. There is nobody who is actively using War Machine for anything but maybe tier 15 Alliance War defense if they so happen to outrank him, which is unlikely. So I think this is one of those champions that just doesn't get used for anything at all under any circumstance, because there's nothing he can do that is still kind of like viable and up to par with modern standards. And I think there's a lot of potential for maybe slight redesign on his skin as well. It would be kind of cool to get him a bit more of them guns and stuff. Like, so currently in the game he pretty much looks like a reskin of Iron Man, obviously, but War Machine typically has a bit more iconic, bulky look, so perhaps a slight visual change would be amazing as well. But in all seriousness, definitely needs a lot more kind of like offensive firepower and whatnot. And yeah, I'd definitely like to see War Machine getting looked at. Now, moving on, obviously, would be Civil Warrior, and I think Civil Warrior, ability-wise, again, he's not the worst champion. He has somewhat decent set of abilities. However, the damage just makes him unusable in pretty much any kind of like more serious endgame content, and that is his main problem. His abilities, his power drain on level 2 is decent. He's kind of like armor up stackings are all right. Then he takes less bleed damage, for instance, which is also kind of handy. Access to heal block. There are many things I do like about Civil Warrior, but unfortunately he just seems to me like a wasted opportunity, because Civil Warrior obviously is a Marvel Concept Champions unique design character, and out of all the champions that they have designed and introduced to the game, I think he is quite definitely the worst one by a big margin. And yeah, this guy just needs some punching power. He is Steve freaking Rogers, Captain America, dressed in Iron Man's armor effectively, and the fact that he can't punch is just extremely sad. And yeah, so I definitely would like to see Civil Warrior getting a look at and getting some rework quite soon. So next champion, let's move on. So it would be Iron Fist, and Iron Fist is again one of those champions that I just feel really sorry for him, because there was a time pre 12.0 when this guy was a damage savage. He was pretty much Monopoly King, just like Corvus is right now, more or less, for Legends runs, because he had the highest damage output kind of from get-go, and before 12.0 his damage was actually respectable. He never has had too much of utility, but at least he could punch. Now past 12.0 obviously they took away all of his punching power, and since we have had so many far superior champions that have more utility and more damage, and at this point the guy has like no immunities, no damage, no utility. There's just not much going on with the guy, and I like him. I liked those armor breaks, crazy stacks that he could put up, and the crazy damage numbers we could see, and that is something that I would like to see from Iron Fist as well, kind of like a glass cannon, plus this whole kind of like inner Iron Fist thing that he has going on, I think could actually lead to kind of like very interesting abilities where he has some sort of charges, where he charges his energy for like some mega punch or something like that. Not to mention that his animation should get revisited as well, because they're very old and very basic, and Iron Fist being like one of the better hand-to-hand combatants in Marvel in general is definitely not really been done justice to him with that simplistic fighting style. Currently, we have seen a lot of champions come out, like, I don't know, Stealth Suit Spidey, like Black Widow, Deadly Origin, who have like fantastic animations, multi-hit, medium, so on and so forth. And Iron Fist needs some of that. Iron Fist definitely needs some of that. He needs to be able to do some crazy, kicky, spinny, spready stuff. And yeah, so I just really hope to see Iron Fist rework at some point soon. And obviously, next one would be Captain Steve Rogers, and obviously could include Captain America World War II as well. Again, one of the more iconic Marvel characters, Captain freaking America himself. And even though we do have Captain America Infinity War, I think that the fact that 2 of the 3 versions of Captain America are so garbage, so useless. And again, this is one of those champions that I feel personally sad for, because there was a time when these were some of the best champions in game that we had. OG Cap America and Captain America World War II used to be known as top tier meta options to deal with a huge block damage or like stun immune fights and stuff like that, because you could take block hits for days. And that is fantastic, and they still have some of that, and that could remain still relevant. The problem is that there's pretty much nothing else apart from the shield in these Captain America versions. They hardly do anything, they don't have any extra abilities, not to mention damage is quite pathetic, and typically they kind of end up being either synergy piece or just staying off the teams altogether. And again, when it comes to picking in between Iron Man and Captain America, I have always been more of an Iron Man guy, because I think that the whole stoic, always good guy Captain America, that just never appealed to me as a fan. But still, for a point that he is an icon in Marvel in general, I think just kind of like should warrant him for a better treatment and some nice reworks. So now we're gonna move into my top 3 positions at this point, and obviously top 3 would start with Iron Man. I think it's Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark. The freaking Iron Man himself has just 100%, he needs that buff. I know we're getting a Hulkbuster buff, but this guy needs it. This is arguably currently the most iconic Marvel character there is, because of how big MCU got. And I know at a time when MCU started, Iron Man wasn't even known to be kind of like mainstream powerhouse of the character. But the last 20 years with explosion of MCU, Marvel has become synonymous with Iron Man, with Robert Downey Jr., with Tony Stark. And I think this champion deserves a god tier, beyond god tier, meta-defining champion treatment. I think this champion definitely deserves to be up there with the best of the best, purely by the contribution he has done to Marvel and getting people playing this game and any other Marvel games. Imagine how disappointed as a fan you would be if you download Marvel Concept Champions after watching like Infinity War or Endgame, because you want to play with Iron Man. And then you get Iron Man in this game and you realize that he absolutely sucks. I think keeping OG Iron Man as a meme tier champion is bad for the soul, is bad for the spirit, and it's also bad for the game itself, because people who are just trying to get in these online mobile games obviously often do it because they like Marvel, because they like Iron Man, or because they like movies. And just being faced with this miserable disappointment that Iron Man currently is in game could be soul-shattering for some poor, unsuspecting new players who are thinking about picking this game up seriously. So I think in terms of this buff, I want it. It's one of my favorite heroes to begin with. And I also think it would be just good business politics. As in, like, I think it would be healthy for the game, it would be healthy for the people who pick up this game to see Iron Man as one of the top options in the game for at least some of the things. But again, let's move on to spot number 2. And spot number 2 is going to be Falcon. And Falcon, again, it's partially because he's still a very big part of MCU. It's partially because he's getting his TV show. Partially because he is meant to be kind of like new Captain America in MCU as well. But additionally to the fact that he's pretty much useless. He does not have like any representation at all. And when it comes to Iron Man's, obviously at least we have the Hulkbuster that's getting buffed. At least we have the Iron Man Infinity War version that is somewhat, well, that is definitely better than the OG one, but still somewhat usable in endgame content. Even that guy also definitely deserves some sort of damage increase. But when it comes to Falcon, just like War Machine, they're champions that we see in front of us consistently, and there are no other versions of them in the game. And if this is Falcon in Contest of Champions, that's extremely sad state of affairs, because there's absolutely nothing he does in the game well. He doesn't hit hard, he has ability accuracy reduction that's kind of useful, but it's tricky to trigger and it's not reliable and you can't get a high uptime. And that's it, he doesn't do anything else. He does have some weak bleed effect, but... yeah, so Falcon. Falcon, as people have started calling him Dollar Store Blade, I think desperately needs that buff. I think he really desperately does need to be buffed. And I would love to see him actually do something. Because maybe in the first movie where he appeared, I think it was Winter Soldier, I didn't have kind of like much expectations of Falcon. To me, he was just like, oh, he's a dude with effectively a jetpack. But then when I watched Civil War, he also had some kick-ass tech. He had his drone thingy flying about. He had some auto-aim rockets shooting out of his wings. His wings was doing an interesting thing, forming a shield, and I think we need more of that in this game. I think we definitely need much more of that. And yeah, so let's move on to the champion that I personally believe needs the buff urgently, the most, with no question. The champion that has to be buffed. This is like with no discussion in my mind. And it's Groot, because Groot is so useless. First and foremost, Guardians of the Galaxy is massive, right? And Groot was fan favorite in the first movie. And then they had a baby Groot, and now we have teenage Groot. And here, our Groot just stinks. I think the whole idea of him being a defensive tank is not really fit to his character as well, because in the movie he wasn't portrayed as defensive tank to begin with. He had like a berserk rage mode obviously in the ship where he did like a lot of things, but he could be like really versatile and useful character, and that I think was the coolest thing about Groot, because he was able to use his plant powers or his body in like many different ways, creating light, stretching, piercing champions, and the animations could be so cool for Groot. If you imagine him, for instance, slashing through opponents or like extending his arms, and there's just so much that can be done with this character, and currently he's pretty much, in my opinion, the worst champion in the game. Like, or one of the worst, definitely. I remember back in 2015, 2016, when I still occasionally used to grind arena, I was purposely avoiding using this guy. Like, when I was grinding arena with like every single champion in my roster, I left Groot out of it, even if I had to, I don't know, use a lower stat champion or something. This guy, it's so pathetic, I didn't even ever want to use him in arena. But yeah, so I think Groot definitely does deserve a buff. I think it shouldn't even, in this case, for Groot specifically, be a matter of discussion. I think as soon as Magneto buff is done, which Kabam has announced, then Groot goes next in line automatically, regardless of any other points and arguments. Obviously, the rest of the things are subject to change. We have a whole bunch of champions in this game. We can see that there are so many different champions, and arguably half of them, at the very least, in my opinion, should get reworked or could get reworked, or there's at least a very good argument for them to get reworked. Obviously, I also couldn't mention every single champion. There are far more champions that could get the rework, like Karnak, Loki, Kingpin, King Groot. Just look everywhere. There is so much potential for better. and everybody has their own favorite champions, but these are kind of like the first 10 champions. Okay, realistically probably 15, 16, because I used multiple versions of champions, but yeah, so these are like first champions that I personally would absolutely love to see reworks. Additionally to the fact that I would absolutely love to see kind of very quick additional damage increase or some extra abilities added to a whole bunch more, like for instance inherently Green Goblin, again Vulture, Beast, Cable, Bishop, Psylocke, Loki. There are so many champions that could be really good if they just had a tiny bit extra added to them, but they don't necessarily need a full on-scale rework. The champions they mentioned in this video specifically were the champions that I think just need to be redone completely. Perhaps even the design needs to be looked at, but most definitely animations and their abilities. But yeah, that will about do for today's video. Let me know what you guys think which champions you guys think should get reworked first. So yeah, everybody again has their own favorites. I in no way say that my opinion is right, because that is what this is. This is my personal subjective opinion about champions I personally would like to see reworked. If it doesn't fit yours, that's perfectly fine, and I'm not trying to kind of like say that these are the champions that deserve the rework most. I'm saying that these are the champions that I would like to see reworked most. But yeah, that being said, if you're still here and if you're still enjoying today's video, then here is some Baby Yoda to reward you for being so patient with me. And whilst you are mesmerized by the beauty of Baby Yoda and deep in thought about which of your favorite Marvel characters you would like to see reworked in Marvel Contest Champions, why don't you hit that like button, why don't you hit that sub button? Basically hit all of the good buttons, stay away from the bad ones, head down to the comment section and let me know what champion you would like to see reworked the most. See you guys.